We're growing up in strange times. Our nation is divided, and that divide is reflected in our local communities as well.
The pandemic deepened the divide, but many people have no idea how to respond beyond engaging on social media. How do we get involved to help make our local communities, our nation, and the world a better place?
Bending the Arc for the Common Good is a student-led effort to learn how to do civic engagement effectively and for the common good.
Hi, I'm Zarina Fief. I'm a freshman at Central High School. I play volleyball and I'm part of Service and Diversity Club.
And I'm Zane. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm in wrestling, and I'm in service club.
So, thank you for coming on so we can ask you a few questions. But before we get started, would you each want to just tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure, I'll start. I'm Dr. Vincent Gaddis. I'm a history professor at Elgin Community College. I'm also the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee for the DuPage NAACP. I'm a board member with Asian Network, which is a national organization promoting Asian studies in the liberal arts. And I also am an adjunct professor at Northern Seminary, where I teach um, courses on urban leadership, and also am uh, tied in that respect to the issues of reentry. I've been talking and doing workshops on the issue of race and racism for 25 years.
Thank you.
My name is Cathy Gaddis, and I'm the executive director of Study Circles Illinois, which has two components one in Elgin and one in Aurora, which are supported by the libraries and the police departments and other civic organizations in both of those communities. And we're looking to expand into Naperville and to Lombard at this time. And I'm retired from Benedictine University, where I was the assistant to the curator of the Komachek Art Gallery there. I've been involved in activism since I was 16 years old, and with different civic organizations and inside the school board 129 in the city of Aurora.
Thank you.
Yeah. So basically what happened at our school is there was two upperclassmen who took a picture with a prom proposal, and it had a racist context on it that referred to Black folks during slavery picking cotton. And it said, and I quote, "If I was Black, I'd be picking cotton, but I'm white, so I'm picking you, prom." And our school is looking for a way to kind of bring awareness to this situation and start conversation about it. And we heard about your study circles, and we thought this might be a possible solution.
And this kind of ties into me and my sister's project, Bending the Arc for the Common Good, where we teach ourselves about civic engagement so that we can teach others about civic engagement so that they will be more involved in their communities. Why did you start the organization? What caused you to start it?
Well, I and Dr. Gaddis both participated in a different iteration of these types of dialogue groups. It was called Study Circle, Aurora Community Study Circles, over 20 years ago. And I met the executive director. I also do web design, and she brought me on to facilitate, develop a youth organization inside of the dialogue group thing, and to build website for that initiative. Dr. Gaddis?
Yeah, in the aftermath of the George Floyd situation, we believed it was important for the community to have a vehicle to engage in facilitated dialogue about the issue of race. In this case, in the aftermath of George Floyd, at a national level. But the advantage of study circles and the way that it brings facilitated dialogue to the fore so that people can honestly explore these issues, I think is a very powerful tool to be able to, let's say at Burlington Central, be able to get students around tables with facilitators and really examine what really are the issues around racism, around this sign, around why the students of color are upset about this sign, and the wider issues that this sign points to in our society, which can be summed up in one sense just looking at the demographics of your high school. So, so I think study circles in that way, that's what it does. That's what we have been doing. We've been doing it in Elgin, we're doing it in Aurora, and have other locations that we're bringing communities together to discuss these issues. And I want to highlight in the realm with facilitated dialogue. And that's a really important phrase there, because you have people running the dialogue who can keep conflict at a minimum and yet facilitate the discussion so that everyone is heard. So that's kind of what study circles is, what we're about.
It also allows the participants to feel safe. And I could send you some stuff too about the guidelines of what we say that should happen inside of a group. But we pre-prepare the discussion guide. So it's not like we randomly get around a table and go, okay, here's the problem. We don't explore it that way. We take a little journey through 4 weeks of sessions to first have everybody get to know each other. And they do that by bringing something from their ethnic background that's important to them. Okay, and they talk about that item. We call them artifacts. They talk about that item. That's an icebreaker and helps you get to know that the people around the table are human beings. They're not the issue. Okay, and then secondly, we get into the issue of white privilege if we were exploring the racism component of it, and we talk about white fragility. Okay, why people don't want to talk about racism. And then we move into the last 2 steps of saying, okay, what's the big problem in our community? Because if you jump in and just start talking about the problem without connecting to each other and understanding what that problem is, because obviously this sign is a part of white privilege. Okay? Somehow she felt privileged enough, and in every one of the articles I read that went, it was a joke. And only inside of white privilege can you assume that that offensive statement about picking cotton, outside of ignorance too, is of how that affects a community or persons of color. Can that type of thing be even considered to be okay to do? Okay, so the last 2 steps we get into, let's talk about the problem. Now, it doesn't have to be 4 weeks. It can expand for as long as the dialogue needs to continue. But in that third, we talk about what's the issue. In this particular thing, we would talk about that main issue. Okay? And then the homework for people to do would be, where do you think we need to go from here? How do we solve this problem? What are you willing to do? We ask for a commitment of action, whatever it is that person feels comfortable doing. Now, at that point, we can hold, since these would probably be multiple groups, we would hold a big wrap-up forum where all the groups come together and you put sticky things all on the whiteboard and you have somebody and you start writing down what the issue is and how to potentially solve it, what's needed to solve it. And at that point, we coalesce all that information and data, and then we pick out the top 3 things that need to be done. and get people to volunteer to work on those three things. Or it can continue. I mean, you can deal with this one issue now, but then we can do a next step dialogue about curriculum in your schools, community policing in your schools, whatever the issue is that needs to, standardized testing, whatever.
So that leads me into my next question. It's like, what is a study circle?
Okay, it's a facilitated discussion on civic issues. And there's 9 different civic issues that we look at. Racism, education, which is where we're getting ready to move with our main groups right now, poverty, early childhood development, mental health issues, community policing, and there's a couple other I can't remember off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, it is also means what is a study circle at the tactical level is 8 or 9 individuals, a facilitator and a co-facilitator sitting in a circle having a dialogue. So it is all of those things that you said, but it is also, right, it is an intentional small group dialogue.
Thank you. So, how do you think a study circle could help our school with this specific issue?
You want to take that one, Vince?
Sure. I think the most significant way that doing study circles at Burlington Central could help is that it opens up a passageway for students, and depending on how you want to structure this, students, staff, teachers, everyone, to sit down and begin having some honest dialogue about this issue. I think the two of you would agree that the prom sign is a symptom of something larger, right? It's a manifestation of a mindset. It is an outward act of some intellectual, emotional, cultural um, um issues, right? Called racism. So, how does study circles help your school? It helps the school by having, let's just say, students in this case, students to really dialogue about these issues of race, to really dialogue about these issues of difference, to really be able to ask questions and think critically about the issue of race in a format where everyone's voice is heard. Now, at the end of that, not only would everyone in the group be more educated and understand race at a much more significant and deeper level, but hopefully through the interactions and the relationship building, we're building bridges across difference. And number 2, the goal of the study circle, if you will, is that each individual then decides what is an action step that I can do on this issue. Maybe it's joining your organization, or uh, joining the Black Student Union, or creating some new student organization, or moving, somehow getting people through the dialogue who want to take some further steps on their own and building them up, that they will be have the empowerment to do that. So that's how I think it helps the school. In the long term, it helps the school by saying, listen, we can do this, on different issues, but we can also do this as part of the curriculum if that's something the school finds valuable, to bring in this set dialogue structure, so that students have a know, or students, so that all students can participate in these kind of dialogues. That's a longer term plan, but I think in the short term, what helps Burlington Central is getting all the students engaged in these dialogues to then explore this issue at a much deeper critical level to understand why that sign was not appropriate ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So you mentioned that a study circle is typically like 8 to 9 people. So since we have like 300 kids about per class, how would we effectively organize study circles?
Great question. We have facilitators, and then where you guys could help, and certainly would be a help, we would need a way for everyone to register through the website, and then the groups would be organized, and then we would run those groups at a certain time, and then everyone would be there. So the logistics are to register, um, have the students register, have the number of facilitators ready, and then run those circles based on those numbers of facilitators. And then the school would have to prioritize when we do this, right?
Now, and also, we would offer facilitator training to young people at your school. You would not be facilitating the group, but you would be a co-facilitator with an experienced facilitator, which is also another thing you can put on your resume and applications to colleges in the future, that you have that training on how to facilitate teams and groups.
Yes, on your applications to Rutgers, the state university of New Jersey, not the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm just saying.
Thank
This
you.
is this is my artifact behind me, by the way. So
I'm from Iowa. Go Hawkeyes. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't even want to think about the pressure on you two about where to go to school. But anyway, go ahead. Ask some more questions.
All right. So, on a broader term here, what types of things can a study circle solve?
well,
Like
if
what?
what you yeah, let me if what you're asking is, can we solve racism in a 4-week discussion? The answer is probably no.
Right.
If the if the if the question is, can in 4 weeks can you shed a level of enlightenment and relationship on people to be willing to change, willing to transform, willing to further engage this topic, I'd say yes, that's what we do. So that's what it solves.
Thank you.
So what's like the process of a study circle? Like how does it run? Like I know there's the facilitators, but is there like a time of how long it goes for, and how would you how do you get to the point where you're in a study circle?
I'll let you handle that.
Okay, since I'm the process girl, Zane, love engineers, love process. Okay. All right. So it starts with organizing. Okay. Letting people know that it's coming, that we're going to do it. Then we train facilitators to ensure that we have enough people who can do groups. Okay, and people go on our website to sign up to say that they're interested in participating. And then what we do, and this is how this works right now on the community level, then in that they tell us when they're available, times and days of the week. Obviously we can't run these 24/7, okay? So then we whittle it down in the community level of how many people do we have who said they're interested, how many facilitators do we have that are available, and then we assign people groups. In the past, we've had a kickoff event, which is kind of like our last recruiting effort, gives people a couple of days to sign up, and we have a speaker from on a major topic that draws people into being interested to hear what they have to say. We've had the pastor who was involved with the Michael Brown Ferguson incident a few years ago. We had a person from the NAACP speak. This last one was a gentleman from the Anti-Defamation League to talk about Jewish hate crimes and what's going on. And that's just kind of a tease. And then we take all those late assignments and we assign groups. And then we start the groups usually the week after or 2 weeks after. And the facilitator, we go into the groups and the facilitator tells them the rules of the group and what's acceptable, what's not. We run it can be 4 to 6 sessions, depending. We cut it down to 4 because we found out in Zoom that people's attention spans really tend to wane to 1.5 hours. Usually the groups are supposed to run 2 hours, but if we meet in person, they will. But in Zoom, we had to cut it to 1.5 hours because people, got distracted. Then after we do that, we have a wrap-up group where all the groups who participated during that session come and talk about, their experience, what they've learned, and where they think action needs to be taken and what they're committing to take action on.
Right. Thank you.
And then we do it again.
So what issues have study circles helped with in the past?
We focus mainly on racism. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, and right now we're just taking surveys because it's been 2 years to gather data to find out where people have made changes in their community. We also, by the way, do blind surveys and send them out to the people who participated to give us feedback. And so that we could give that feedback back to the people who have the power to make the change. But what in its original iteration 20 years ago, it changed the face of Aurora. It changed, and it was all through individual commitments of people running for city council, running for township board, working on gentrification issues in our community, working with feeding people. I would say the CRB right now, 20 years later, right, the Citizens Review Board is a direct result of that demand over 20 years where people never gave up demanding from the city that they have a Citizens Review Board about police issues. Elgin Police Department is highly involved with us. And yeah, it's changed a lot of people. People's hearts are the biggest thing that need to change first, especially in the issue of racism or whatever they're passionate about.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So in these study circles, is there a specific target audience? And if there's not one that you shoot for, is there one that you like? Is there a pattern that you notice?
The target audience are human beings. We do not allow non-human beings in the meetings.
Good to know.
Unless they're one of those stressed dogs or something. No. But we've done one through the township of Aurora that was elementary school kids, which was amazing. They talk better than grown-ups do. So I would say, if I had to say, 5th graders on up. We've run circles with Benedictine University, one as a class for their students, but we also did one for eternal faculty and staff.
So, based on your experiences, how can we as individuals help our school with this issue.
Okay,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go. I'll start with a facilitator question. How do you think you can help your school?
Well, I think that we can bring your organization to our school using with facilitated dialogue, and that would really solve this issue, and it would bring a greater understanding to students' minds.
Serene?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I don't know if it would completely solve the issue, like you said earlier, but I think it'd be good to start conversation about it because I know there's a lot of people who genuinely care and need to just talk about it. So,
And that's what this allows for. And I think we all know that it is a much better space to open dialogue and deal with these issues in that way than for groups to run off into their own different clique mentalities, which ultimately can foster an environment where this happens again in a different way and maybe in a more aggressive way, right? And that's what we don't want in the future, right?
And when you're dealing with people like school boards, city governments, and that type of thing, standing out in front of the school with a sign intimidates. Okay, they're humans. It makes them worry. Where is this going to go to? How far is this going to escalate? At this point, it would actually be a great form of de-escalation and proactive into dealing with the problem.
yeah. So my next question leads off of the last question, but how can we, like me and Zane, go to our school board and principal and then the students and encourage them to attend something like a study circle?
Go ahead, Dr. D.
I would.
I got to get a cup of coffee, so I'm going to go black for a second, okay? I'm listening, though.
I would, number one, ask for the meeting. Number two, I would have the meeting, and then you would have to decide, is that the time to bring, say, Mrs. Gaddis or myself with you to talk about study circles? So the first thing would be ask for the meeting. Second thing is, or better yet, even, he's the principal, right? You just sort of happenstancely run into him, and you say, hey, Mr. Principal, here's an idea. This could work. Let's set up a time to talk about it. Okay, boom. We come in, we talk about it, and then the school would have to make a decision. Is this something they would want to do or not? As far as the school board is concerned, I would go to a school board meeting with several student leaders who do think that this is a good idea. I would sign up for the public time. Every public meeting, due to the Open Meetings Act, allows for public comment. I would use each of you, your 3 minutes of public comment, to say, look, this is an issue. This is not just a prank. It's not just a joke. It's not just something that comes out of nowhere and it's just solely individual. I mean, all of those are rationales to avoid dealing with this issue, right? This sign didn't happen in a vacuum, it happens in an intellectual and cultural context. And so so Mr. and Mrs. T school board people, we demand that you use this vehicle, study circles, to engage this 301 district in having a dialogue that we really need to have because this sign shows that it's necessary. And that would be how I'd start it off with if you're going to talk to the school board, is do that and then see if you can, through a member of the school board, even get on the agenda for the meeting, which would then give you even more time to advocate your position. But I think it's in terms of what happens in the building, right, at the high school, I think that's the purview probably of the principal more than the school board. And just say, listen, man, we need to have these discussions. You know, we don't want this to turn into something ugly, and we certainly don't want it to happen in the future. So let's begin the dialogue now so we don't have these kinds of events in the future. Right? I mean, y'all made national news. That's not good for you. That's not good for Burlington Central to be on CNN.
Yeah, so I think this is a good time to wrap things up, but thank you for coming on and answering our questions.
We appreciate it.
We appreciate you. My only question left for you two is, what's the follow up for us? What's next for us? Me, you, Mrs. Gaddis, Zareen, and Zane. What is our next follow up? What's our next step?
Well,
Oh, sorry.
we could try to bring your organization to our school, and your help in that would be really like more persuasive for our school.
Yeah, I think.
Let me know what you need.
Thank you.
Oh no, let me do this as the executive director. Whatever you need, you got.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I have the authority to commit study circles to projects and programs. You got it.
Now hold on. We are totally committed as long as we also see an application to Rutgers University.
Do not let him coerce you, okay? Iowa.